Let's be honest, Michael Masi isn't the most popular man in the Formula 1 world right now. Unless you work for Red Bull, that is. 2021 proved to be quite the problematic year for the race director. He's been under fire on multiple occasions for his decision making and also his interpretation of the rulebook. Sorry, Mercedes fans, you know where this is going. But who is Michael Masi, and how has he ended up in charge of the biggest and most expensive motorsport in the world? And is he fit to continue as race director? Let's find out. So let's take a look at Masi's background quickly. Michael Masi hails from the land down under, which I'm sure is a surprise to absolutely no one who has ever heard him speak.
Go ahead.
In his adolescent years, Michael worked in Australia in the Super Touring series, before making the full-time jump to Tega, which is the Touring Car Entrance Group Australia, and then moving to the massively popular Supercar series from 2003, which is his first foray into working with stewards and with race control. From here, he moved to the CAMS, or Confederation of Australian Motorsport, in 2008, before making the jump back to supercars in 2012 and being moved on to the Deputy Race Director role there in 2015. Now, I imagine not many people would know that Masi was actually involved in the preparations for the first Singapore and Korean Formula 1 Grand Prix in 2008 and 2010. So he wasn't exactly a complete unknown to the Formula 1 world before making the jump. Masi left the Supercar series to join Formula 1 as the co-deputy race director, along with current Formula E race director Scott Elkins. This was at the request of Charlie Whiting, ahead of the 2018 season, after his long-standing deputy race director Herbie Blash announced he'd be stepping down from his role. Masi was due to come back for half of the 2019 season as the co-deputy race director, as well as being made the sole deputy race director for Formula 2 and Formula 3. Unfortunately, the sudden passing of Charlie Whiting on the eve of the first round of the 2019 season in Melbourne left Formula 1 without a race director and a much loved character in the paddock. So suddenly one of the most important and powerful roles in Formula 1 had some rather massive shoes to fill. Step up Michael. And Masi took on the role of race director for the entire 2019 season and was then offered the position full-time from there on. Now, it has to be said that Masi has one of the most difficult jobs in Formula 1, is ensuring driver, marshal and fan safety, all at the same time as having Christian Horner and Toto table-slamming Wolf giving him stick every 5 minutes. But does that mean that Masi can avoid any form of criticism? Absolutely not. From the fans' perspective, we don't see or hear too much from Masi, similarly to how you don't hear much from a referee in a football game. But the addition of the FIA team radio being broadcast to the world in certain races this year, it's given us a much more behind-the-scenes feature that we've never really had before. And my god, is this man sassy or what? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure having teams complain at you all the time can get quite tiring, but some of the replies from Michael show a level of pettiness and pedanticness that even Jacques Villeneuve would be proud of. His time at the head of Formula 1 has drawn quite a few criticisms, and these range from minor to the downright insane. Again, you know where this is going. So let's start with 2019 Monza. Charles Leclerc gets a black and white flag for driving standards by squeezing Lewis off the track at the entrance to the Della Roggia chicane. Sorry, a black and white flag?
It's a hard knock life.
Up until this point, pushing another driver off the track has always been a 5-second penalty or to give up the position, but not on this occasion. Okay, I guess this one isn't so bad. 2020 Imola. We have Lance Stroll unlapping himself and nearly hitting the marshals that were still on the track. We have the 2020 Turkish Grand Prix, where Q2 started while Latifi's stricken Williams was still being recovered by a recovery vehicle, with marshals and the vehicle still being on the track as Kimi Raikkonen and other drivers went through. Many drivers said this was a very bizarre and, let's face it, dangerous decision. 2021 in Baku. I would say this one is the most dangerous of all the ones we've said so far, and it's just the length of time that was required to bring out the safety car and red flag for both Lance Stroll and Max Verstappen's tyre failures on one of the fastest parts of the F1 calendar. It took for other drivers and even Red Bull to get on the radio and tell Michael that the race needed to be red flagged, with Max Verstappen sat in his car with cars blasting past at over 200 miles an hour. we've got 2021 Spa Grand Prix, if we can call it a Grand Prix. But this is down to the horrendous conditions of qualifying, where we had many drivers saying that it's far too wet and Q3 should not be started in the current conditions. But Masi let it go ahead, and it only took a few minutes for poor Lando Norris to find out that it was actually far too wet and caused him to have a massive accident at the top of Radion. Now we get to the business end of the season with back-to-back shows. We've got the 2021 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where Masi was bargaining with Red Bull and Mercedes over grid positions, which is simply unheard of. Not only that, but he completely forgot that poor Esteban Ocon existed.
Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, I thought you'd said...
No, my apologies, because I hadn't looked at it.
And then we get to Abu Dhabi. Oh boy. Now we all know what happened here, so I'll spare you the boring details. But essentially, Hamilton gets a brilliant start off the line, takes the lead, Max lunges one up the inside going into the chicane, squeezes Lewis a bit wide, slightly controversially Hamilton goes over the runoff, keeps the lead, but in the grand scheme of things, this was barely even the tip of the iceberg in terms of controversial. Latifi crashes, safety car comes out, Verstappen pits for brand new softs, Hamilton can't pit otherwise he will be behind Verstappen. Masi says the lap cars won't be able to overtake, he very quickly changes his mind and lets lap cars overtake, but he only lets lap cars overtake between Max and Lewis, giving Max a massive tyre advantage for the final lap of the race. In the most bizarre ending to a season I think we can all agree we have ever seen, and Max is the world champion. After the race we then had the fun of Mercedes appealing the race result, but as we all know both of those appeals were thrown out and nothing changed. But I think it's interesting to note that in the defence that Red Bull put forward, they stated that any lapped cars may overtake the safety car, does not mean all lapped cars must overtake the safety car. But this is in direct contradiction of what Masi said after the 2020 Eiffel Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, where he's quoted as saying that it is in the regulations that all cars must unlap themselves during the safety car period. And I think all the fallout from this with the appeals and everything that went with it really took the enjoyment out of the end of the season for a lot of people. It felt like Verstappen fans couldn't really celebrate the championship in the way they might have wanted because there was the threat that it might yet be taken away. The Lewis Hamilton fans felt aggrieved by the result, and rightfully so. And then for the people that were just tuning in to see how the season ended and weren't too bothered about who won, still felt like they were left with a bit of a sour taste purely based on the FIA and Michael Masi. Now, I don't think anyone can deny that there was a very obvious attempt this year to get the title to go down to the last race of the season. And it worked. And it was absolutely one of the most entertaining Formula 1 seasons I think any of us have seen. But does that make the result fair from the final race? No. And should Masi take the fall for this? I mean, the title was decided entirely on his decision in those final laps. And I think he has to take the fall out. His decision was one that favoured the show, rather than the actual rules and fairness of the competition. And that's a dangerous road that I don't think Formula 1 wants to go down. The next issue is, who would even replace Michael Masi if he wasn't to come back for 2022? And more so, who in their right mind would want this job after seeing the absolute shit show that's just taken place? For what it's worth, I agree with Toto Wolff when he said that the regulations around what happened in Abu Dhabi need to be addressed to avoid a repeat scenario. Because what has happened, and taking Masi out of the picture won't make anything better for Mercedes or for Lewis. In fact, if Masi was to step down or the FIA were to replace him, then it could give the impression that they know a huge mistake was made in not ending the race behind the safety car, as would have happened if the rules were followed correctly. And I don't think that would be a good look for the FIA or for Formula 1, to be honest. We also don't know if the pressure from Red Bull, or maybe even from others within the FIA to restart the race to get that dramatic finish that they so clearly wanted, was actually part of Masi's decision. Now, one thing is for sure, regardless of if Masi returns for 2022 and beyond, the sporting credibility of Formula 1 has been somewhat tarnished by his interpretation of the rules. You have to wonder, will he, or the stewards, the FIA, still have the respect of the teams and drivers going into next year? And at the end of the day, your view on Masi is going to differ based on if you support Max or you support Lewis. But surely we can all agree that the sport needs consistency in its decision making, just for the fairness of competition, the safety of the drivers, fans and marshals alike. How entertaining a Formula 1 race is, or could be, or how interesting the championship is, or could be, should definitely not have an impact on any decisions that the race director makes. And unfortunately that's what Michael Masi did this year. So there we have it, a quick look at some of the decisions that have landed Michael Masi in hot water over the past few years. and let me know in the comments below if you think he should continue as the FIA race director for 2022 and beyond. As always, like and subscribe if you're new, and hopefully we'll see you again next time.